Hey, what's up everybody? Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new, I'm Amanda. Welcome to the channel. I have been getting a lot of requests just to tell my story because through all of my celebrity interviews, I kind of scatter bits and pieces of it about. I talked about it a little bit here in the video I made for the It Gets Better project, but I never really delved into the backstory here on the channel. So for all the people that are interested in that, I want to be able to just give you some perspective on what it is I've been through, on my journey through self-harm, through symptoms of depression and anxiety, through my suicide experience, through the addiction. I just want to give you guys some backstory and perspective on that because I have a feeling that a lot of these things are things that you have either struggled with in the past, and that's why you're here, someone you know is struggling with these things, or it might be something that's brand new to you and you're struggling with these emotions and stuff during this time, because I have seen people that never knew anxiety, depression, panic attacks that are suddenly having these things surface for them during this time of quarantine. So I just want to start sharing more about my journey and my experience. So I'm going to start a weekly vlog here where I'm going to be sharing either things that I'm currently experiencing, situations that I'm currently going through, or past situations. For example, today I'm, like I said, going to talk about my journey just kind of as an overall, as a looking back, looking over the overall journey, the overall picture. But I'm going to break things apart and I'm going to be sharing those with you guys in the coming weeks, months, and who knows, maybe even years. But I just want to make sure that everybody has somebody that they can really just listen to or communicate with, in a community where they can share their experiences and their stories without judgment, without self-judgment. You don't have to feel bad for what you're going through right now because we're all going through something, right? So a little bit of backstory. A lot of people ask me if I had a rough childhood, and the tip of the iceberg answer is no. I had two parents that very much loved each other. They loved me. They spoiled me and gave me all the love that they could until they passed when I was in my early 20s. I was, however, very ostracized by my peers. I was very bullied. The first and only babysitter I ever had when I was a child locked me in a closet, and that was the only sitter I ever knew after that. After my parents found out about that, they pulled me out of there and made arrangements through the jobs that they had and stuff to be able to be with me so that they could monitor me and stuff. However, I think looking back now, that definitely triggered some underlying issues. I was in my 20s diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or BPD, which has a lot to do with abandonment, which has a lot to do with things that could have surfaced from this experience. And as for my peers, as I said, I was always very ostracized. I wasn't very accepted. I didn't have many real friends until my teenage years, till I was about 13, is when I made my first real close friend. So I always felt very isolated, and I started showing symptoms of anxiety and depression as far back as first or second grade. So I was showing symptoms of something going on when I was very young. That was already there. And it kind of got more and more intense as things progressed, you know, as I continued to be bullied and ostracized through school. And by the time I hit my teenage years, to be truthfully honest, I hated myself. I couldn't get a date. I couldn't really connect very much with people, and I felt very self-conscious. I was still being ridiculed by my peers. I was never good enough. Either I was too fat, yes, I still had about the same body type. I was frequently called fat. I was told that my breasts weren't big enough. My hair wasn't shiny enough. I didn't wear the right clothes. There was absolutely always something. My first suicide attempt was when I was in my early teens, and I was just already at the point where I didn't know how to handle things. I had been self-harming for quite some time. I started self-harming when I was about 13. I found out a friend was doing it, and at first I judged her. At first you kind of freak out when you see something like that, and I had no real exposure to it. But the more the voices in my head kept trying to come to terms with what she was doing and trying to make sense of it, I knew in that situation she wasn't trying to take her life. She was trying to cope because she had a very hard home life. And she was trying to cope. And I didn't know how to do that. Despite the fact that I'd already been in a few different therapists' offices and just wasn't really offering anything for me. And I remember when I realized why she was doing it, and I tried it, and it felt like I had, all my thoughts were kind of like water in a kettle, and when I did that, it let the steam out. And I'm not gonna lie, it was glorious, but I felt a lot of shame and I felt a lot of pain. But ironically, I remember when my dad used to say that he was joking, but if I was complaining that, say, my arm hurts, my dad would say, well, I'm just going to kick you in the foot and that will take the tension off your arm. Kind of the same concept. So that started in my early teens. When I was 16, I moved to a different city to be with a guy that I had known for 4 days. I convinced my parents to move across the country because we thought that Arizona, we lived in Missouri, we thought Arizona would be better for my dad's declining health, and I wanted to be with this guy because, to be frankly honest, he showed me attention, and no guy had ever really showed me attention before. He was popular, he was cute, it made sense. So I convinced my family to move to Arizona, where I was with this guy for a few days, and we broke up. Shortly thereafter, again, I was kind of chasing the attention of another boy, and he ended up sexually assaulting me. So I dropped out of school because I never wanted to see him again, and I couldn't face him. And that's when the behavior really started to escalate. I started partying a lot. I started smoking a lot of weed. I started experimenting with other drugs, namely cocaine and pills, because I'd already had this really deep self-loathing, and having someone violate you like that just made it so much worse. And the only real thing that I had, the only healthy coping mechanism I had, was my mom had just introduced me to, she'd given me Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park shortly before the assault. To be honest, I have no idea why, because I'd just gotten out of an NSYNC phase. I was absolutely obsessed with NSYNC. So she gave me the CD. I guess maybe she thought it was a boy band or something. I don't know. But she gave me the CD. It didn't have any parental advisory sticker on it. So for you guys, no parental advisory sticker. That was probably her criteria. But I remember it being like a soundtrack to my life and helping me through what I was going through. I was in a new town. I didn't know anybody. I had been abandoned by the only person that I knew there, that I trusted. And my dad's health started declining. And I was so stoned, and I was so drunk, and I was so far away from myself that I don't think I really was present with him. And if I have any regrets in my life, that has to fall in the top 5. And my dad passed away when I was 20. And I really clung to my mom because she was all I really had, my mom, my music. And we moved to Ohio to be with her family. That didn't work out. We moved to California. We were homeless on and off for the next couple years. We ended up in California in a small little apartment that we paid for on defaulted credit cards. And shortly after moving, a couple months after moving, she passed away. So now I'm in a town where I know absolutely nobody. I ended up jumping straight into a relationship. I was constantly drinking, smoking cigarettes, pretty much doing anything I could to cope. I tried seeing therapists. I'd actually been trying to see therapists for quite some time. I'd been trying to utilize therapy. I was always very self-aware, and I knew that I needed help, and I wasn't above getting help. And I'd been in and out of therapy. I'd been on and off medications. None of them helped me. We'll talk about that more. I feel like that's an entire video for itself. But so I went through all this time in a relationship that became kind of quickly emotionally abusive. It wasn't serving me. He ended up leaving me. I chased him back to Arizona. And things just got really, really, really ugly. I got pregnant with my son, with our son, and I don't think I'd ever felt so alone and detached in my entire life. I had nobody. I had this baby that I wanted to feel connected to. And on some level, I guess I did, very deeply and intrinsically, but I didn't. And that was really hard to come to terms with. And he was barely a year old when I decided to split with his father, because it was really bad. It was very, very bad, very unhealthy, to be honest, very scary. And I had gone through incredibly intense, untreated postpartum depression. And I was okay for a little bit. I ended up jumping into another relationship that kind of mirrored that one, because we tend to do that, right? We kind of get in the same relationship over and over and over, just with a different person. And I just slowly kept declining. To be honest, I never really had a chance to figure out who I was. Never. I'd never really had the chance to be me, because all I was ever told my whole life is how that wasn't good enough and how that was broken. And to be truthfully honest, I believed it. I believed it to my very core. And in 2017, I had been trying to build a business, which was doing pretty good, but I got sued by one of my dog clients. I had gotten freshly out of this second relationship that wasn't serving me. I was wrongfully accused of a DUI, and I was in a car accident, and this is all within a 2-week period. So the only thing that I really had to turn to was Linkin Park, Chester Bennington. His life story had really helped me. Their music had really helped me. So I'm sitting there listening to this music like I'd done since I was 16 years old, and this is a solid decade and a half later, and he tragically took his life to suicide. So now I don't have my mom. I don't have my dad. My friends are a million miles away. I am drowning in my own self-hatred, in pain, and now I don't even have the music that I'd turned to for so long. And I thought, if this person who had everything, fame, money, family, wife, if he couldn't make it, what chance did I have? And I spiraled hard. I spiraled into drugs, into coke, really hard. My self-harm was at an all-time high. And I never used her on my son, but I split custody with his dad, so I had plenty of time. And obviously when he was asleep and stuff. And I hit a rock bottom of my life. And there was a solid 6 months where I was more of a shell than I'd ever been. I was nothing. I was absolutely empty inside. And I ended up finding out that the surviving singer of Linkin Park, Mike Shinoda, was doing a meet and greet for the first 100 people in line at an event for an album that he'd done, Post-Traumatic. And I ended up going from Arizona to California to be able to go to this event, because I said, I just need to say thank you, because their music really did get me through a lot. And I never had the opportunity with Chester, so I figured, okay, I'm gonna go say thank you. And I sat on a sidewalk coming down off cocaine, because I did not have the guts to take on an airplane with me, for 24 hours. Just a little bit over 24 hours to see this concert. And it was insane. That, again, is a whole entirely different story. The coming down, the struggling, the cravings. But I did end up getting to meet Mike, and he hugged me, and I thanked him, which is all I wanted. And he drew a little puzzle piece with his initials on my wrist. I don't know if you could see it because it's white, but I immediately went and had it tattooed. And I knew in that moment that I just, despite the fact that I'd been self-harming and I'd been on and off drugs for a decade and a half, I just couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I was being a hypocrite. I was hashtagging all over social media, make Chester proud, every time I did any kind of charity work, and here I am, you know, going down the same path that led him to where he was. So I promised myself that I was gonna stop. And this is in June of 2018. I promised I was gonna stop. And I did. And come October of 2018, I was in Canada for a Justin Timberlake concert. Remember the aforementioned NSYNC obsession? And the concert was a nightmare, but to be truthfully honest, that was just the icing on a really, really, really nasty cake. I quit doing the drugs. I quit self-harming. But everything that made me feel the need to do it in the first place was still there. And while I was in that Canadian hotel room, I thought, I can't do this anymore. I hurt so bad inside. I felt simultaneously on one hand completely freaking empty, and on the other hand, every fiber of my existence was just a throbbing pain that I just couldn't cope with anymore. And I climbed out on the ledge of my hotel room, and I stared down at the roof below, and I thought to myself, I hope this doesn't hurt because I just don't want to hurt anymore. And I thought, this is what's best for my son, and for me, and for all my friends and family. This is what's best. They don't deserve this. My son deserves better than some fuck like me as a mom. My friends deserve better than to be burdened by this. So does my partner. And I really believed it was best for everyone. Song playing at the right place and time brought me down. And I went through some crazy experiences that led to a very intense awakening that really motivated me to take my power back and start making a lot of significant life changes that led me to be happy and to get decertified as having a serious mental illness, despite the fact that I was told that that was not possible by multiple mental health professionals. I was told that being SMI, or serious mental illness, was a lifetime thing, that nobody gets decertified. But I took my power and I changed my life, and I did get decertified. And it was a process. It was not easy. And there were so many aspects to it. I actually ended up creating an entire course for it, but it was very, very intense. But I'm now at a place where I'm happy. And I never thought that was possible. And I'm very passionate about sharing that with other people, about sharing that it is possible. It does get better, like the video I did that I mentioned in the beginning of this. It does get better, but what they don't tell you is it gets better when you make it better. And I told myself, I believed in my very, very core when I was on that ledge that I had tried and done everything. I was wrong. There was so much more that I had control of and that I had power over. And it was just a matter of piecing that together. And I ended up, it ended up being very almost formulated, that there were several very necessary steps that I took. I now call it my 5 puzzle pieces of happiness. I'm actually doing a 5-day challenge just to kind of teach it to everyone for free. I will link that in the comments below, or in the description below. But to have gone from a place where I could look at my son and I could feel nothing at all, and then I would feel guilty and devastated for just not feeling the bond or the attachment that I was supposed to. I would get up in the morning and I would just feel this heaviness. I felt this pain. I felt dread because I just didn't want to do it again. I just didn't want to get up and do it all over again. I was exhausted. To go from that to being in a place where I could get up in the morning and say, okay, I'm just gonna look at today like a video game, where it's an adventure and I might need some new items and I might need some potions or a fairy or some new skills. But I know that I can get to the boss. I know I can defeat the boss because I've already defeated the bosses. I just need to figure out where to go. I need to figure out what to collect. But I'm happy. I went from being depressed. I don't remember a time before this last couple of years where I wasn't depressed. I went from that to being able to genuinely feel fulfilled. And I just want to start vlogging and start sharing these experiences in more detail. I'm going to break this apart over the following weeks and share separate pieces in more detail, because I want everyone to understand that there is another side to the depression, that it can get better, that there's hope, and that you deserve to feel just as happy as anyone else. Nobody else has any special privileges. Nobody else has anything that you don't have deep inside. You're not broken. You are not crazy. And I just want everyone to be able to share their experiences and their story and get it out so we can come together and we can heal together. So thank you guys so much for joining my first little vlog here. Never done a vlog, so thank you so much for joining me on this today. And I will see you in the coming weeks for the next episodes. Mwah.